We have folks in this room of all different religions, including some of no religion at all, and I always appreciate our non-religious friends who support religious liberty because they're fighting for a right that they don't expect to use themselves. They're fighting for something for other people, but they do it because they believe in freedom, they love their neighbors and their country, and they know it's the right thing to do. If I may exercise my own religious liberty for a moment, one reason I like starting a Becket dinner with a prayer is that Becket often goes into battle massively outgunned and facing gigantic opponents. We have to win our cases against the biggest and richest entities on the planet, huge corporations, sovereign governments, billion-dollar law firms. You might think of us as a little David who goes around picking off the Goliaths who stand in the way of religious liberty. And my own view is that prayer goes an awful long way in that kind of fight. My own view is also that we're a little more Navy SEALs than Shepherd Boy, but we're still usually dwarfed by the bad guys. Yet despite those long odds, religious liberty's been on an incredible run over the past 15 years, and our team at Becket has been right at the center of it. Back in 2010, religious liberty was often thought of as a second-class constitutional right. Now, 2010 is not that long ago, but in the big religion case that year, Christian Legal Society versus Martinez, the discussion was all about free speech. Religious liberty was literally just a footnote in that case. Well, 15 years later, no one thinks that religious liberty is a second-class footnote of a right anymore. Becket is now 11-0 at the Supreme Court. We've got 2 more cases that we argued in the last month or so, and you can tell we're winning from the headlines. The New York Times recently ran a news article with a headline talking about, quote, religion's remarkable winning streak at the Supreme Court. The Washington Post recently ran a House editorial taking Becket's side in our case about the school district refusing to allow opt-outs when they indoctrinate little children about sex. These schools said that parents had no rights at all when teachers instruct their 3- and 4-year-olds that the doctor just guessed at their sex when they were born and that they should go off and think for themselves about whether they're a boy or a girl or both or neither. Even the Washington Post said we were right. And talking about that same case, CNN ran a news article and explained how the gigantic government we were facing and the gigantic law firm that they hired to beat us, how somehow they were the ones at a disadvantage in the case. Here's a direct quote from CNN. I wish I had written this, but I didn't. The parents challenging the policy were represented by Becket, which has brought several successful cases to the High Court in recent years and has more pending. In that sense, the Montgomery County schools were at a disadvantage before they even entered the courtroom. Close quote. I mean, like, that's great, right? Like, poor little Goliath government that has to face the Becket Fund, right? Sad little billion-dollar law firm that has to face the Becket Fund. My favorite line of the year, though, comes from a federal judge who, in a published opinion, referred to the Becket Fund lawyers as a fleet of Maseratis. He actually said it. It's in print. You can read it. And I was really deeply proud to read that because we work awfully hard to find and retain incredible, incredible people to work at the Becket Fund. And these people give their professional lives to fight for this cause. And it's wonderful to see a judge recognize that. In fact, here are a few of them to tell you a little bit more about what we've been up to.
The court receives 8,000 petitions a year, and they only agree to hear 80 of them. And so the odds of getting there are just so enormous. When I got into the courtroom, I just had to take a few minutes to geek out, honestly, a little bit. There is a sense of history, the sense of the cause, the sense of all the people, from our donors to our colleagues to our families, who have sacrificed to make this kind of work possible. You really feel that weight going in, but also it's just a pleasure to kind of represent that going forward and to put one more brick in the wall defending the religious liberty of people across the country.
For 30 years, Becket has defended religious freedom for people of all faiths. And in just the last 15 years, Becket has represented clients before the Supreme Court in 11 cases, with a unanimous winning record.
Here we had this order of nuns that have been serving elderly poor people for over a century, and they were about to be crushed by the most powerful government on earth.
The Green family, who started and still runs Hobby Lobby, was willing to put everything on the line. It was a choice between following their faith or potentially losing this business that they had built over the decades. It was such an inspiration to me. I mean, how could you stop, right? How could you not want to fight for clients who are willing to have that kind of courage and put everything on the line?
And I remember my commute after work each day would take me past the Supreme Court. I would jog home from the office, praying for mercy for a win in Hosanna Tabor. And everybody thought, 5-4, you're gonna win, you're gonna lose. Then when the decision came out, it was unanimous. Nobody predicted unanimous. It was unanimous win for religious liberty. And I remember just every commute after that for weeks, running by the Supreme Court, just going, unanimous. It's just one of the best moments of my life.
One of the big things about a Supreme Court win, it's not so much where you are when you find out, it's what you do next. And every single time, what we do next is we take that win and we plow it into the next case. Frankly, into the next 3 or 4 or 5 cases.
Everything at Becket is done strategically and with an eye toward setting precedent and changing the law.
That when a court issues a decision, it's resolving the case for those parties in that case, yes, but it's also laying down a legal principle that other courts have to follow in its wake.
Every win can have an enormous ripple effect that impacts cases that arise in a lot of different contexts all over the country.
We don't have time to litigate every religious liberty fight in the country. Instead, we need to pick the right case at the right time and bring it to the right court.
And when we win the right cases, we're building on each other, building precedent that stacks up, that builds a fabric that protects people of all faiths all across the country. And every case works together, building toward that goal.
Because Hosanna Tabor was the right kind of case, 415 cases in courts across the country have relied on its reasoning to strengthen religious freedom. Of course, Hosanna Tabor is just one case. Here's Fulton v. Philadelphia, Holt v. Hobbs, and Hobby Lobby. All told, Becket's Supreme Court cases alone have been relied on over 4,000 times and counting in courts across the country.
Our cases are making such a strong impact on the law that the Ninth Circuit recently referred to our wins in Fulton and in the COVID cases as setting the bedrock for how courts should think about the Free Exercise Clause. And that's our goal, more bedrock.
The cause of liberty isn't something you can sleep on. Now is the time to take that foundation that we've built in the law for over a decade and turn it into long-term gains for religious liberty.
All of these legal victories, these precedents, they're like roots in the ground. They're the thing that you depend on to become strong when harder times come.
Our goal is to build out wins that have deep roots and will stand the test of time. And that means We want other courts to rely on those cases over and over again. And we want free people to be able to live out those rights and carry out those rights and raise their children and run their schools and do all the things that people are entitled to do. The more people do those things, the more courts rely on those things, and the deeper those roots get, the harder it will be to take them down. And that's what we want to build. We want to build something that lasts.
Now, if you are religious and you see all of those David versus Goliath wins stacking up over time, each one against incredible odds, and then each being multiplied hundreds or thousands of times over, I hope you think, like I often do, wow, God must really be helping the work of the Becket Fund. And if you have that thought, I hope right after it you have the thought, well, if God's helping the work of the Becket Fund, I should really be supporting the Becket Fund too. And if you're sitting here and you're not inclined to see the hand of God in Beckett's work, then I hope you just look at all those against the odds wins and say, wow, Becket must be really, really good. And then I hope you say, I should be supporting the Becket Fund too. There's always a risk that people will make the mistake of thinking that the things we're achieving are easy or automatic. In fact, that federal judge who called Beckett's team a fleet of Maseratis actually wasn't complimenting us. He finished the thought in a negative way. He said, quote, "You don't need a fleet of Maseratis to go back and forth to the grocery store." I feel so misunderstood. And that's actually from a really good judge who gave us a win in the case, but just couldn't see the whole picture of what we're doing and what we're about. We're not going back and forth to the grocery store. We're building out the law of religious liberty carefully, in a way designed to help our children and our grandchildren, our country, our churches, and our synagogues long after we're all gone. And if that ever looks easy, it's precisely because we deploy a first-rate team. And we use a carefully constructed strategy. And then we fight tooth and nail, coast to coast, to build out the law in a way that will last. Thousands of hours of hard work and millions of dollars of investment go into making all that look easy and obvious. But there's nothing easy and obvious about it. And here's one way you know that we're not just going back and forth to the grocery store. Religion and religious liberty have real enemies, real opponents. Every year we see new laws proposed to take away religious liberty protections in federal and state law. Across the country, plaintiffs' lawyers are suing churches to take away tithing funds and collection. When religious schools try to educate children in the faith, they face government and private actors trying to control their hiring, their teaching, their funding, their admissions. We see in cases college professors and hostile students showing up in court who openly seek the right to discriminate against Jews on campus. When religious parents try to opt out of indoctrination, they get called xenophobes and white supremacists. When bureaucrats don't oppose a parent's religious beliefs about sex and gender, the government tries to take their children away. There's more, but you get the idea. No one attacks you like that when you're just going back and forth to the grocery store. They attack you like that when you're moving mountains, when you're changing the game. And that's why what you saw in the video is so crucial. And it goes back to the vision of our founder, Seamus Hassan. These cases aren't just about winning for our brave and faithful clients. They're about building out the law over time. They're about multiplying the wins by having them get relied on over and over again, literally thousands of times over now, so that they light up that map and they become so ingrained in our courts and our culture that they can't be rolled back. And that doesn't just happen in court. Religious liberty gets embedded deeper in our country when people and organizations rely on these decisions and exercise their rights and live out their faith. Wins in court are actually meaningless unless people of faith go use them. And every time they do, they help us build something deeper and stronger and more durable. And when we all play our part enough, when that wall of precedent is built so high and the roots of religious practice run so deep and so strong, then the opponents of religion and religious liberty will decide it's simply not worth trying to take down what we've built together. That's the victory we're aiming toward. One last point. We're not tiny little Davids anymore. Becket and the religious liberty movement are getting bigger and stronger and doing more with your help. We're winning in court, we're winning in public, we're winning the future in our law schools, and by my count, we have representatives who are involved with efforts to have religious liberty clinics at 7 different law schools here tonight: Notre Dame, Pepperdine, Catholic University, BYU, so the great religious law schools of our country, along with Stanford, Harvard, and Yale. Some other good law schools too. No, wonderful places all, powerful places all, and they're helping us win the future. There's nothing simple or cheap or easy about what we're all doing together in this movement. But the work is worth it because the stakes are so high and the path to success is so clear if we put in the work. So here's the bottom line. I actually don't mind if a federal judge thinks we're all just going back and forth to the grocery store. I don't care if the Washington Post thinks our wins are easy and obvious after the fact. And I don't care if the generations who get to live out their faith because of our work never even know who or what we are. All I care about is that the people in this room and in our movement know what we're fighting for, know what it takes, and stay for the long haul. And if we all do that together, we'll keep lighting up that map and we'll keep winning. Thank you, and please enjoy your dinners.